أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Selamun Aleyküm ve Rahmetullahi ve Berekatüh. Inshallah, we will continue with the 14th droplet. This week, inshallah, we will continue the third paragraph of the 14th droplet. Consider the flashes of miraculousness in its repetitions.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We are reading from the words, the 19th word and the 14th droplet. And this word was focusing on the prophethood, the messengership of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And now this 14th droplet is focusing more on the Quran that the prophet brought. So inshallah, let's study this. Consider the flashes of miraculousness in its repetitions, in the Quran's repetitions. So consider the flashes of miraculousness in the Quran's repetitions, which are imagined to be a fault. Okay, so which are imagined to be a fault. Since the Quran is both a book of invocation and a book of prayer, and a book of summons. So the Quran is both a book of invocation and a book of prayer and a book of summons. The repetition in it is desirable. So the repetition in the Quran is desirable. Indeed, the repetition is essential and most eloquent. So the repetition is said to be essential and most eloquent. It is not as the faulty imagine. For the mark of invocation is illumination through repetitions. Mark of innovation is illumination through repetition. The mark of prayer is strengthening through repetition. The mark of command and summons is confirmation through repetition. Moreover, everyone is not capable of always reading the whole Quran, but is mostly able to read one surah. Therefore, since the most important purposes of the Quran are included in most of the longer surahs, each surah is like a small Quran. That is to say, so that no one should be deprived certain of its aims, so that is to say, so that no one should be deprived certain of the Quran's aims like divine unity, the resurrection of the dead, and the story of Moses have been repeated, so that no one should be deprived certain of the Quran's aims like divine unity, the resurrection of the dead, and the story of Moses have been repeated. Also, like bodily needs, spiritual needs are various. Man is in need of some of them at every breath. Like the body needs air, the spirit needs the word who, translated as he. Man is in need of some of them. So man is in need of some of, just like the spiritual needs, man is in need of them at every breath that they take. Like the body needs air, so the spirit needs the word who, translated as he. For some, for some, the need is in for every hour, like in the name of God, and so on. And so on. That means the repetition of verses arises from the repetition of need. That means the repetition of verses arises from the repetition of need. It makes the repetition in order to point out the need and awaken and incite it. awaken and incite that need, and to excite desire and appetite. Also, the Quran is a founder. It is the basis of the clear religion and the foundation of the world of Islam. The Quran changed human social life and is the answer to the repeated questions of its various classes. Repetition is necessary for a founder in order to establish things. Repetition is necessary to corroborate them. Confirmation, verification, and repetition are necessary to emphasize them. Also, the Quran speaks of such mighty matters and minute truths that numerous repetitions are necessary in different forms in order to establish them in everyone's hearts. The Quran speaks of such mighty matters and minute truths that numerous repetitions are necessary in different forms, right? In different forms in order to establish them in everyone's hearts. Nevertheless, they are apparently repetitions, but in reality, every verse has numerous meanings, numerous benefits, and many aspects and levels. In each place, they are mentioned with a different meaning for different benefits and purposes. Also, the Quran's being unspecific and concise in certain matters to do with cosmos is a flash of miraculousness for the purpose of guidance. The Quran's being unspecific and concise in certain matters to do with cosmos is a flash of miraculousness for the purpose of guidance. It cannot be the target of criticism and is not a fault like some atheists imagine. Okay, Bismillah. So, all right, so let's study. Consider the flashes of miraculousness in the Quran's repetitions, which are imagined to be a fault. So now there's apparently a criticism on the way the Quran keeps repeating certain matters. So that's what is being pointed out here, right? So even though they are considered flashes of miraculousness, but the author is saying that the repetition is also part of the miraculousness, right? Consider the flashes of miraculousness in the Quran's repetitions. So the Quran having those repetitions is something that is miraculous. And then I guess he elaborates that. Why does he say that is miraculous? Right? So and then he says, which are imagined to be a fault. So I guess some atheists claim that, the same thing is repeated often and often, like many times. And then he continues on, since the Quran is both, again to the definition, a book of invocation and a book of prayer and a book of summons. So since Quran is a book of various sorts, right? A book of invocation, a book of prayer, and a book of summons, the repetition in the Quran is desirable. Indeed, it is essential and most eloquent. So based on what the Quran stands for, what its definition is, the way we were studying in the previous paragraph on quite extensively that we went through, right? Seeing that as human beings, we need the guidance that the Quran offers, right, to answer our existential questions. And that is the way we are able to know who our Creator is, who our Lord is, who is the one who is our sustainer, as I remember from the previous paragraph, right? So, and then he says, with that definition, this is indeed very essential and most eloquent. And I guess he does explain it further on why we need the repetition, but I will pause here and see if anybody wants to jump in and offer their thoughts. Okay, if not, I can continue on till we hit another point. So the author says that it is not as the faulty imagined. So the repetition being there is really necessary, is needed, and it's contrary to what the faulty people imagine it to be. Now he explains that the mark of invocation, right? Part of the definition for the mark of invocation is illumination through repetition. All right, so how do we understand this? The mark of invocation is illumination through repetition. So it's saying through repetition is how, I guess, the one gets to know and is illumined. So illuminations, it opens up one's world, how I understand it. So the message in the Quran, it opens for me, a human being, this, the answers to many things. So I get really acquainted with the author of the book, as well as the author of my author and the universe's author, if I take everything as analogous in terms of as a book that one has to read and understand. Right? Please interrupt me at any moment if there's something that is wrong or needs to be added or corrected or enhanced. The mark of prayer is strengthening through repetition. Yeah, so mark of prayer is strengthening through repetition. So I know, like, the more things, as many repetitions that one does, and even in our practical lives, right? The more for example, if I am learning to read, and the more I read, the better I get. Or if I'm doing, mathematics problems, for example, with practice, I get better and better at that. Same thing with, let's say somebody's doing programming and computer science. The more they use that particular language, the more they practice, they get better and better. So repetition is very essential in that sense. So it strengthens whatever skill that one is acquiring. So the same thing in terms of the prayer, which is a necessary need for human beings, right? So the repetition in the Quran strengthens that prayer aspect.
So I guess the question here is, let's say in a math book, you don't see the same topic being mentioned in different chapters. For you, yes, definitely, you need to solve a problem about the same topic several times to improve it. But is it required that the book mentions it in several places? Why not say that, okay, we have written it here, go and read it several times?
No, but practically, we know that if we practice those as much as we can, then we get better at that, right? Although the book may not say that in the mathematics book, but as an example of repetition in the exercises, right? It may give you like an exercise sheet which will have many, for example, problems to solve, right? So, and it's probably testing one concept in different ways, right? But the more you do it, the more you are actually getting skilled in that particular concept.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what kind of repetition is the author referring to here. The mark of prayer is strengthening through repetition, as in, you can be doing an exercise and still not getting the gist of it. Repetition needs to be elaborated. What kind of repetition are we talking about, right? I don't know, I'm thinking. Maybe, let's see. So you're presented with different events, the events, I mean, everything is carrying a meaning, a message. So repetition for me would be knowing my goal. Hey, what do I have to do with this event? Let me extract the meaning, the message from it. So repetition for me would be that. So yeah, but I can be cognizant that yes, every time I'm tackling an exercise, I have to solve or I have to get the solution, right? Solve the problem. But I think the essence in repeating something really lies in the whole process of it to getting to your answer rather than getting the answer. And I think, and I'm just thinking out loud as in here, the process needs to be worked out. And I'm also thinking you always have to ameliorate your process. You can't keep using the same process. I mean, the approach all the time would be the same, that yes, I need to get to the solution, come up to the goal, but how do I get there? And the more I'm cognizant that what my end goal is, the better I'll be able to solve the problem. If that make any sense.
Yeah, so let's see the examples he gives. For example, someone can ask, why does the author keep repeating, about divine unity, for example? In the Quran, several times it will say, believe in God or believe in the one, everything is given to you. Several times it would highlight that. And then somebody say, hey, you keep telling me the story of Moses, and Moses, a segment here and then a segment there, and it keeps repeating it. Right? So what is the purpose of that? Right? So these are the things the author at least is mentioning here. Right? Like in the sentence he says, certain of its aims. So there are particular aims that the source of existence of this universe wants to human beings who are intelligent, cognizant, and aware of, endowed with so many tools to understand what this universe means. So there's the author wants to communicate to these individuals or these intelligent beings, right? That be aware that, how you're using your free will, for example, which we have. Be aware that everything is given existence by the one, the source of existence, who is the creator of the universe and is unlike anything in the universe. Right? So going again to Faria, what you were saying, right? So we need that repetition, just like in the math example. The more we do it, so the more we really take in or see that the message of the Quran keeps reminding us, right? Because that's the way we are. We need to practice. We need to work on this, right? But the repetition helps us actually improve, either physically or mentally or spiritually. But
what do you mean by when you refer to repetition? What does repetition mean? I mean, yeah, can you elaborate more on repetition? Because you can be doing the same problem and not even getting anything, right? Things can be repeated. You can give a kid like 10 problems, with the same concept, and, he'll do it on autopilot, like, robotically, but then not get the concept. So I don't know, to me personally, repetition needs to be elaborated, where the author is saying that invocation is illumination through repetition. So something needs to be illuminated with what's being repeated. Otherwise, repetition can get also boring. And I'm speaking that in terms of, and any adolescent, they'll be like, oh man, same thing being repeated again. Even with, literally speaking, with anything, exercise, they're like, okay, same thing again. So what is the eliminating part in repetition is my question.
Anybody wants to comment? I mean, I think that's what the criticism is, right? So from the atheist is written in the book by the author. They say that exactly. Why do they keep repeating, in the Quran, the same thing is being repeated over and over? But if it's not repeated in one shot, does anybody get anything? Let's say the student in your example, if you just give him one problem, is there any way he's gonna get it? Right? If he doesn't get it, then you give more and more to just strengthen that, right? Even though again, if the student is not using all the tools that the student has, right? Just like human beings, they are given so many different tools to exercise and really comprehend what this universe means. Same thing, the student should use whatever the abilities within the student to whenever they're practicing, right?
So I will just start from the beginning. So practically, as author is also giving the example, let's say Bismillah, the verse Bismillah is being repeated 114 times in the Quran. So you can say that, okay, this was mentioned at some point, why are you keep repeating that? Or as Asim was giving the example of La ilaha illallah or La ilaha illahu, or this sort of messages is all over the place, almost in every page, maybe not almost, in every page of Quran, this message is being repeated. Or the concept of resurrection, a second life, is being mentioned all over the book, again and again. So why is that? I mean, you would ask a question, you wouldn't expect this in normal books, because in a normal book, in the first chapter, there are going to be some topics. In the second chapter, they will just say, if you didn't understand this point, go back to the first chapter. And they will talk about something else in the second chapter. So this is generally how you would see in a textbook or in a book in which information is being conveyed to you. So, but I guess in here the author is starting with a definition for the book. Defining what Quran is, again, this is how he started for the last 2 weeks we were discussing. And in here, he's also talking about 3 different roles that we should be expecting from Quran. One is saying that Quran is a book of invocation. Invocation, not sure if this is I was checking the translation. We can, in the original language, he's using zikr, so you can take it as a reminder. So Quran is a book of reminder. So this is one thing. Another one is it's a book of prayer. Again, we are going to talk about what prayer is. And it's a book of summons or invitations. So it's inviting us to somewhere. So given these 3, what are required of that? And again, a very practical example. Let's say Faraz and Isa. So, or anybody, like child, father, parent relation. So the child knows that the father loves him, but is in need of hearing the word that I love you, or the manifestation of love being shown in a way. This is not really a repetition for the child. Child wouldn't say that, okay, that's enough, I got enough of it. Well, maybe if the child gets into adolescence, might get fed up, but I guess wives would never get fed up with that. I mean, hearing it from husbands. But this is not a repetition. It is in this case, for example, it's a need for that person, because human is in need of being recognized. So another person reminding you that I recognize you is a need for you, for example. So you wouldn't say that, why do you keep repeating this? So in such a sense, Quran is also repeating things. And Nursi is saying that if you are seeing this repetition of Quran, like Bismillah being repeated, as a problem, this is because you are classifying Quran under a different genre. But Quran is not a textbook, it's not a theology book,
I mean, it's not this sort of a thing. It is, in here he says it's a reminder, it's a book for prayer, it's a book for invitation. And these requires repetition. And as we just read, the part for reminder, definitely for reminder, I am in need of repetition. Because let's say a new concept is being built up, but since everything is so much related to each other, when Quran is going to, let's say, mention me about resurrection, without talking about the oneness of the Creator, there's no way that you are going to explain resurrection. So even if the main topic is resurrection somewhere, there has to be a reminder about oneness of the Creator and also the messengerhood, because the topics are so much interrelated. So the reminder is necessary in there. You cannot say that, okay, today we are going to study resurrection, but if you are missing anything about oneness of God, go back, study this topic. But in any ways, it's going to have a position. The oneness of the Creator is going to have a position in the topic of resurrection as well. So it is necessary that it is going to be repeated partially under this subtopic as well.
There is also, I guess, another part. So I'm not sure all these examples with like from textbooks or even like different topics that we study. I'm not sure these examples are, let's say, good examples in that case. Because, let's say, with a math or, I don't know, any topic that we study. So assumption there is you study one part and you master this part and then you go on to another part. And you don't need to study the first part anymore. Like once you master, let's say, the tenses in English language and start studying another aspects of the grammar, if you already know the tenses, you do not study tenses anymore. So you're already done with it. But when he says the Quran is the book of invocation, prayer, and summons, so these, I guess these words are not just random choices. He didn't say the Quran is a book of learning or is a book of, I don't know, the human life or book of the existence, book of reality, whatever. Quran is not trying to teach us something in that sense, at least in this context. He's trying to remind us something, therefore repetition. It guides us in our prayers, therefore repetitions. And it's the plan or the way of summoning or asking from God, therefore repetition. So I guess, at least in this context, I might be wrong, but at least in this context, examples from a learning perspective, I'm not sure would make much sense here. Like even when we take resurrection, for instance, right? We're not trying to learn about the resurrection. Or let me, study what resurrection is, how it will take place, or, what are the consequences of such an action, and so on and so forth. This is not the aim of the Quran. Quran wants to remind us about the resurrection. Quran wants us to show how we should ask good in resurrection. So, again, I guess learning paradigm, maybe it may work in other contexts, but in this context, at least, I'm not sure it's the best paradigm, as an example. Because, as you were saying, like, if it is math, I wouldn't expect any repetition at all. Like, yes, I constantly study to master a topic, but I do not repeat the same question. Or I do not read the same sentence again and again and then again and again. I do not do that. It doesn't make sense. But here, I need to repeat the same sentence again and again. Like Bismillah, the exact same sentence. He will explain later, like always used in other contexts. So it's not the exact same sentence, but even as an initial step, it seems like an exact same sentence. La ilaha illallah. Same sentence. So I guess the repetition is there not to make me know better something, but just to remind me. Because I'm in constant need of him. I'm in constant forgetting. So it's not something I can master and go away. The La ilaha illallah, with every action of mine, needs to be reminded to me. Because I keep forgetting.
And I guess also the concept itself is not as shallow as how to learn summation. Summation is a topic, it has a beginning, it has an end. So it's not like, this is why you learn it once and you are done with it. But the concept of La ilaha illallah, so it is, your intellect partially takes something out of it, but all your other senses has a message to listen to in terms of what La ilaha illallah means or applies to myself. But this is why, okay, once I read the message of La ilaha illallah, I get something out of it, but it's not that I can totally consume and finish the La ilaha illallah. This is not really the case.
I guess that's the reason he's talking about the needs. Like, my needs are endless. Even a single need that I can think of has like infinite different dimensions. Like with food, for instance, not only my body needs food, but also my soul needs the food, the same food, because my soul needs to taste the flavor out of it. Like, it wants to taste being provided through the food. So a single item or single action in my life has all these different dimensions. Because I have all these different dimensions, as a human being, I cannot exhaust myself. So the same La ilaha illallah, as you said, looks to different birkan at every time. Sometimes it speaks to my intellect, sometimes it speaks to my soul, sometimes it speaks to my nafs. Sometimes it speaks to the olfaction, the sense of smell. Sometimes sense of sight. So I guess the way author, at least the way I see, the way author takes this topic into hand is showing us we need all these things that repeated constantly. Our needs are repeated. Therefore, the sustenance these needs, for these needs are also repeated. Just like Yusuf's example of I love you. Because your need for love never ends, therefore the sustenance for your need, being love, is repeated, needs to be repeated. You cannot say that, oh, I already told you I love you, right, last year. Why you are expecting me, say it again? Don't you learn it? But it's not about the learning. It's about the need is still there. Yes, it was sustained before, but it should be sustained again.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. You see, the example of the mathematics is more about like comparing it, setting up the stage why we need repetitions, right? That's from the way we are experiencing in the the way worldly kind of things in our daily interactions with the universe, right? So it's just an analogy. Of course, we're not learning from the Quran. It's not that kind of textbook as any book that we find in this universe. I absolutely agree with that, right? Because the Quran has a different definition. It's for a human, to address human needs, right? And the mathematics is not really addressing my that human needs, right? Unless it tells me, hey, appreciate the order and everything, and know that there's an order giver. Until I reach that level, which is from my human side, right? Then definitely, yeah, the repetition is needed, because the way we are made as human beings, yeah, we need to be reminded that's how we are. We forget, we don't remember at every moment, yeah, there is, Bismillah, La ilaha illallah, like that. There is the owner, I have an owner, this event is presented to me by this owner. And that really brings I have that need, so which is why the repetition for my human side is necessary. And I think that's what the author kind of refers to further on, as we are going to read. But again, so that's another thing you pointed out about the invocation as being the reminder, or being to remember something, right? So I see that for the mark of invocation is illumination through repetition. So by remembering, we get more familiar and aware of who the source is, who is communicating with us and telling us, introducing us to all the different qualities that we see. We see mercy, we see compassion, we see justice, right? We see beauty. So all those are reminders, or a way for us to remember, right? We have to see many of them to actually appreciate and really, really enhance our human abilities and qualities to see that, yeah, be fully be utilizing our senses. So that's so at least that illumination part is what is tied to or maps to how the remembrance and reminder zikr, as Yusuf was mentioning, that ties that together. Anybody wants to comment on that, the zikr and illumination?
That makes sense. Thank you, everyone, for elaborating more on this. So my takeaway was really that our needs are repeated constantly. Just being in recognition of this, like questioning why are the needs repeated, right? That can lead to illumination. And I'm trying to connect that back to the initial query I had. What is the illuminating part in my repetition? So really, whatever I'm made to experience as a repetition, right? What is the illuminating part in it? So obviously questioning the need, all the senses, feelings, and then being able to connect it to something not of the nature of this universe. And that definitely eliminates one, I would say. Because then you know that you're being provided everything, somebody's out there giving messages and introducing itself. So yeah, you can illuminate your spirit by being cognizant or aware of the repetitions that you are made to experience here. And even though you're questioning, like, why am I made to experience all this repetition, right? So it's a human need. So if you have this question, then there must be an answer to it, which I guess the author is describing it here as, then the Quran becomes a book of invocation and like an answer to your queries and questions.
Yeah, thank you. So I was thinking, how about the athletes when they keep practicing, I mean, that's an amazing order also. They keep doing it and they keep getting better, right? So through repetitive exercises, they really, really improve their abilities, like the physical abilities, right? I mean, that itself is an amazing order if one thinks about it. Like, if you keep doing it, then you really improve yourself. I mean, how did that order come into being? That, keep doing it. And that's now going back to the purpose of the Quran for our human side. In the same way, the way we see the order of repetition, same way to our human side. If we keep remembering and really recalling who the owner is, right? The reminder being the Quran being the reminder and really illuminating us, introducing us to all these different qualities that we are observing, the better we are going to get. At least we're going to get more familiar in our human side. Our consciousness is going to pick up very much better, right? It's going to improve, right? They say like improving your mindfulness ability. There are like different techniques that some organizations are working on. And the Quran has that particular technique. It keeps repeating things. La ilaha illallah, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Keeps repeating it. And that's how at least the human being is able to really improve and really improve their tools and their senses and their whatever faculties that the human being has. Any comment on that?
So I was going to say something about the prayer. The mark of prayer is strengthening through repetition. So prayer in here is dua. So the author is saying that for dua, its purpose is going to be fulfilled with repetition. Thinking about it, what is purpose of my dua? Is purpose of my dua to constantly ask until he gives? Meaning that by asking, my purpose is to take. If it's a car, if it's a career move, whatever. Or the purpose of dua is through dua, I recognize something, my neediness. So my truth becomes revealed, unrevealed to me through making sure, because by repeating, each and every time I remind and recognize for myself how needy I am. It's not like once I confess to myself, oh, I am in need of a creator, this is why I am asking from him. Especially for that, I have a tendency to forget it very quickly. And even further, especially if I achieve something, right at the spot I forget that I was once asking for it. So for dua, meaning the tool for remembering my neediness, I am in need of constantly repeating dua so that it's going to fulfill its purpose.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's very powerful, actually, now that I'm thinking. When you achieve something or you're provided with something, then, yeah, we tend to forget that we're needy. And, yeah, I think that's where the whole essence of what does dua entails really lies. It's really the recognition of one's reality. And I think that's beautiful, I would say, in any case. Just being in recognition of what your position is in this universe. I think it solves all kind of human problems, I would say.
So Yusuf, how would you tie that to the strengthening part, prayer and strengthening?
So the purpose of dua is strengthened by repeating dua. The purpose was to be cognizant of your neediness. So how do you strengthen this recognition of being needy? Reminding yourself about this constantly through action, through asking. So, because you can also say that, okay, let's analyze myself. Yeah, do I have anything? No, I don't have anything. So, by questioning, you can also arrive to some conclusion that I am needy. That's true. But I guess by practically asking for it, being cognizant of neediness and taking one step further, asking or declaring my neediness plus asking for, or using the asking as a means for declaring my neediness to myself is, I guess, the best way I can think of to strengthen this concept of my neediness to myself.
The essence of dua is recognizing that you are an abd. And with every need that you have, it is just a different dimension, different window open to you to understand and deepen your understanding of your abdness. And it's all like a 360-degree, you go around and understand yourself and your neediness or your abdness, which strengthens the your belief.
Sorry, I didn't get the last part. You said, so how does it strengthen your belief as being an abd, a worshipper?
I think it is the deeper that you go with your understanding of your abdness is the greater as a result of that how do you say it? Is it inverse proportion? If you want to really understand the Creator or increase the belief in in the Lord, you need to one needs to deepens the understanding of his abdship or being worshipper. And in practical terms, this means that everything that you go through in life is another opportunity given to man to practice that understanding, put that understanding in practice. So as long as or as much as we can put that understanding in practice, comes back to us as in strengthening our belief in the Lord or Droplet, if you want. Just to add this, that he is in charge of everything. He's in control of everything, and he is the one taking care of you and putting you through all the kind of experiences that you go through to teach you and train you.
So really it is a conscious worship that is needed to really strengthen, right? To recognize, as Yusuf was also saying, about the human needs that we have, and not to put ourselves, being self-sufficient kind of people where we don't need any, sustainer. But that's why a conscious recognition of, who we are, what our state is, what we are, what our needs are, and that becomes that prayer. And that's how, that worship also ties into that, the conscious worship. And that keeps strengthening, me, basically, strengthening. It strengthens in that way. Because I get to know that, that I have an owner and that somebody is taking care of my needs. Right? That's the way I get the attention as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think Nurse does this in like, since like, starting from the very first word, and like you can see this like throughout all his work. There are two basic things, like as far as I understand. Understanding your impotence and neediness is really the basis, like how he interprets the Quran, right? That's one aspect. The other aspect is being impotent and needy. At the same time, there is this aspect in human being that you also have the tendency to assume that you are doing the things yourself. So on one hand, like you are needy, on the other hand, like you have the tendency to describe the things to yourself. So like in the prayer, or the essence of the prayer, to me, understanding being aware of that neediness and impotence is one aspect. Like the other aspect is like giving up on your claims, false claims that actually you are in charge of your own life. So if you describe the essence of the prayer as such, then like to me, like every event that you go through in life, this is something that you can put in practice, and you can live with this understanding. And as much as you do this, it's just a constant reminder to yourself about your own nature, and also like giving up your like false claims about like almost like the small godlike attitude that one may have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So I think in that sense, like even the text says reputation, I am not sure if it is really a true reputation, because since human needs are like endless, and together with it, like man is like infinitely impotent. So needs are constantly changing. So like that constant change in the needs requires constant change with the meanings that you will receive out of your own experiences, and constant meaning that you can get out of like not constant, sorry, how should I say this? Different meanings each time. To going through like different like situations in life, or understanding different needs of yourself requires different meanings that you can get out of the experience, or different meanings that you can get out of the guidance itself. So in that sense, there is no such like two different things that is completely equal to each other, as far as I understand. So you cannot really mention of reputation in the sense of 100% being the same. And that's because like the needs are constantly changing, and like there is also the variety of the needs. If I am to give an example, for example, like experiencing the feeling of love and understanding La ilaha within that experience, and experiencing the feeling of compassion and understanding the La ilaha within that context, seemingly is a repetition because the answer is La ilaha, but in reality, it's a two completely different experience. So the meaning you get out of it may not be exactly the same, or like should not be exactly the same, like speaking in terms of, yeah, like by definition.
The question.
Right. It's not exactly the same, right? Because every moment is a new moment. It's a new day. Right? Just like we eat food, it's a new day for us. Right? It's a different experience. Right? I see what you're saying. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody was commenting.
I was. So when I read Quran, then when I see, let's say, La ilaha illallah, then I should ask myself why this is being reminded to me. Because if we take it as a reminder, that means I need to be reminded.
I think it's a reminder because it is reminding you a confirmation that you have done before, but at the same time, it's a reminder within a different context. So it's not exactly the same thing.
So that's the way I should be feeling then. Otherwise, when he says, imagine to be found, since the Quran is both the book of invocation and the book of prayer, it is not as the fall to imagine. So the fall to people, or people missing some truth.
Can we just say that, like, people, the faulty people are the ones, not a certain group of people, but the people, the ones that are not aware of their own needs, like, for the moment. Because, like, I guess what you are gonna, like, your need or awareness of your own need will determine what you are gonna get out of that phrase.
That's
so
what I'm trying to get, yes.
Yeah, if you are not aware of the need, then the phrase itself is gonna be in repetition in the true sense that there will be no different meaning.
So that's exactly where I'm trying to get, like, when I read Quran, when I read La ilaha illallah, if I don't see that it's addressing or is sustaining a new need of mine, if I don't see as a reminder, let's say, or an invocation, then that means in this context, I'm a faulty person. And this is usually the way Quran is being read, like by myself, for instance. Like I read La ilaha illallah, but it doesn't resonate with me at this moment. It's something I already know. Right? It's even when I read, let's say with the original letters, I also have difficulty reading the letters. But when it comes to La ilaha illallah, it's so easy because, I have it from the memory. Until La ilaha illallah, I have, I'm reading in a very slow phase. And then when I reach the La ilaha illallah, I just read it very quickly and pass. Because it's so easy. So it's not reminding me anything because I'm not in need of reminder at this moment. There is no need that it can sustain for me.
There was a discussion, or like it was one of the retreats in Ohio, like a few years ago. Why should there be like endless meaning in Quran? And how, like, because if you think about it, it's just like written text from cover to covers, 600 pages or whatever. How can you really get infinite meanings or endless meanings out of that text? And it was something eye-opening for me. What determines the Quran, like the Quran message or the meanings, is the fact that you and the universe is in constant change. If you read the Quran without bringing yourself into the equation and without bringing the universe into the equation, then most likely the meanings are going to be limited for you because you're just reading a text then. But if the Quran is the interpreter of the universe or the existence itself, then you need to bring the universe and you need to bring yourself into the process, and then universe and yourself are two entities that is subjected to like constant change, which leads to the different meanings that you can get out of the text then, because your context in a way is being constantly changed, if you like. I don't know if I'm confusing you or if I'm able to...
No, I really like this because...
convey the... Like, that was the summary that what I took from like 2 hours or maybe 2 days discussion, that if you don't bring the universe and yourself into the equation, then most likely you are not really reading the Quran.
And Quran will be just, let's say, mere repetition for you.
Yeah, like that it's going to be a repetition in a true sense. Then I guess like then it just makes sense to ask that question, what's the point of like constantly reading it, and also what's the point of bringing the same topic over and over again in different like places in the text?
Is the part you mentioned about everything being changing. I guess this also put another nice dimension to the existence of Quran, why we have such a book, like a book which is not changing. And also prophet. Let's say the historic aspect of the prophet or the human aspect of the prophet. Like there's a certain person when we say prophet, right? While everything is changing and violently changing, changing non-stop, entire universe, Quran and the prophet acts like a constancy in the equation, like it's something you can hold.
Reference point.
It becomes a reference point, and then it makes sense when authors talks about invocation or reminders. Because everything is constantly changing, we all the time forget what is fixed behind all this.
Like giving a practical example, like on the way here, we were talking about Yusuf. I told him that like because of the weather, the change like in the weather, I started coughing these days. And I told him that I must not die these days. And he said like, why not? And I was like, because in the past, like I wouldn't really care if I died, but now like since we have the kids, I must not die because like what's gonna happen to them? And Yusuf said that like you're always having those discussions and saying that like God is the Lord, like He is the taking care of like everyone. And how can you like make a statement like that? So like, do you see the point? Like, even though like this is a context that La ilaha can be applied, which I didn't. I just described it to myself. Like I thought that I am really the one. Like even though I cannot control my own body, but I'm like I have this illusion that I am gonna be the provider. So whatever is like being like talked about here is not anything really like super theoretical that is hard to understand. It is very practical that we just don't know how to put it in practice. That's why when we talk about the subject, it sounds like it is very like irrelevant to our daily life.
And as Yusuf was saying, just for clarification, in the example, Yusuf, you're referring Yusuf Chelikbar, right? Not Osman.
Not, yeah.
I'm sure people already get it because it was a clever point. So, as the other Yusuf, Osman Nun, was saying, the the things like La ilaha illallah, they're not very easy to exhaust. It's not like, oh yeah, I understood it. As you were saying, like there's no end to our attributions, to our claims, false claims, ownerships. Even if you give one part of the life to the Creator, attributed one part to the Creator, there will be always another part of the life that you will forget or willingly deny.
Ascribe to yourself.
Yes. And you will ascribe it to yourself. So, La ilaha illallah must be there with every action, with every breath you take.
So, like, if one really tries to put that like phrase in practice, just that phrase is inexhaustible in terms of like understanding or like living with that kind of consciousness. Like, forget about the rest of the Quran, like all the rest of the verses. If one really wants to truly internalize that like statement only.
And I guess what author says, there's no such thing, he says. Like, you cannot just understand and internalize it and you are done. You need to be reminded, let's say, at least until you die. I mean, at least until the death, we can kind of imagine that, yeah, I need to be reminded. After that, I don't know what happens.
This may be a little bit irrelevant. Like a couple days ago, for whatever reason, I remember the conversation that took place between a Sahaba and Hazrat Umar. When Sahaba asked him like how often he reads the Quran from cover to cover, and I think Hazrat Umar says that like he's still in Baqarah or something. And the Sahaba is like, shame on you, like you are the leader of the like Ummah. How can you just like get stuck in like, why don't you like read it more like often? And Hazrat Umar says that like that's the like best he could do. He could just only read until like certain verse in Baqarah, and he couldn't go any further. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that statement. Like, if you really want to truly like read the Quran, even Hazrat Umar couldn't read from cover to cover in a month, let's say, because there is this like I guess tendency that want to finish it like very often, right?
So what about the next part? He says, moreover, everyone is not capable of always reading the whole Quran, but is mostly able to read one surah. Therefore, since the most important purposes of the Quran are included in the most of the longer surahs, each is like a small Quran, that is to say, so that no one should be deprived certain of its aims, like divine unity, the resurrection of the dead, and the story of Moses have been repeated. So I guess he's saying, which was also discussed in earlier verses, earlier words, the chapters of the book that we are reading. Each surah itself is like a translation of the universe. And each surah has the seed of the entire universe, the Quran, kind of, right? And when he's talking about the important parts like divine unity, resurrection, and what about the story of Moses? Is he just giving an example, if possible, like because the story of Moses really repeated a lot of time in Quran? That's true. Should I take it as just another example? It's just giving, which is understandable. Or is he trying to say something else there, like putting it together with divine unity and resurrection.
Yeah, that's what I understand. Basically, by repeating the story of Moses, it has its other aims that the Quran is trying to highlight. It's more important, significant factors that are impacting, like, or that I'm concerned about as a human being, right? So again, like, as I know some of you were saying that with the repetition, it's always the continuous change that we are experiencing. We have to bring ourselves and the universe and then tie that into what the message of the Quran brings to me in that repetition, right? So every time the La ilaha illallah gets a new meaning and a flavor based on the change. I'm changing and the universe is changing. And again, as you were saying about not everybody is capable of reading the whole Quran. So everybody has their own understanding, right? So if I go, for example, a university class, those who are teaching would know that not every student gets the same level of understanding, right? So everybody has their own level of whatever they get. Some may get more, some may get not so more. Some people need extra repetition, right? So that's the human beings are similar in terms of when we are trying to understand what the Quran brings, sometimes we need more repetition, right? Because based on our needs, how much we feel the need of the message, the more we will benefit from the Quran. And yeah, so the story of Moses, although it's repeated several times, but each time it's in a different context, it will have a different layer of meaning. And of course, it will be within the general purpose of what the Quran stands for, what the definition is. That's what I understood.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, you're right. The more we feel the need to understand our reality, the more the Quran makes sense to us. So really it's a matter of feeling the needs, like the human needs that we are endowed with, but we just need to, to recognize them more and more. And that's why the different, even whatever repetition we are made to experience, it serves its purpose. The purpose is really to make us, to awaken our consciousness, to realize the need, or needs, human needs.
The rest becomes even more interesting. It says, also like bodily needs, spiritual needs are various. Man is in need of some of them every breath. Man is in need of some of them every breath. Like the body needs air, the spirit needs the word who, he. Like the body needs air, the spirit needs the word who. So the first part is easy to grasp. Yes, my body needs air every breath.
Right, so what happens when there's no air? All right. So same thing when there is no word of who, then our existence means nothing. Right? So we need that. Just like the body is here, our spirit needs that connection, that tie to the one that is sustaining us. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I was out of words at that moment. Thank you. So going back to what you said, so what happens to our body when there's no air? So if what author says here is true, then when there is no word who, my spirit should also suffer. So, or it should be the case that my spirit is in suffering, because sometimes it cannot get the word who. So what should I understand from the word who, first of all?
So I guess the concept of he, there is a he which is fulfilling my needs, which is taking care of everything that I observe. Because otherwise I cannot make sense of what I am experiencing, what I am seeing. So this concept of, I mean, even take it with, let's say in this academic circles, this very secular, the temples of secularism, this topmost professors, whatever, even in them, I am seeing the very naive perception of there must be a superpower. I mean, you see that, yeah, this person is a professor here, so he or she must be a very strong, staunch unbeliever. But when you get into a candid conversation, you see that, yeah, there must be a superpower, and then comes some sort of distortion. But this concept of superpower, for example, one of such persons said that, yeah, initially I became an atheist, but later on, as life is just grinding me, whatever, the conclusion was there must be a superpower. Yeah, I cannot deny that. Because human, I mean, by superpower, I understand it as he. There must be someone, otherwise I cannot bear with this existence, and also I cannot explain this existence. So I guess human spirit is really in need of this concept of he. And this is why, for example, Surah Al-Ikhlas starts with Qul huwa Allahu ahad. So this concept of huwa, he, or who, is already there in you, but you do not know what he is, who he is. Quran comes and starts explaining you, say, he is Allah, which is ahad, which is samad, so on and so forth. But this concept is in there, and human is in need of remembering that. Otherwise, life becomes very heavy on my shoulders. I cannot bear with it. I cannot explain it.
He says your spirit needs he. Who? So, I guess it must be something more than making sense of reality. It should be something like, I don't know, it should look at the, let's say, compassion as well, coming with he. So I'm in constant need of such a being, loving me, taking care of me. Or my spirit must be, I say must be, I'm trying to understand what author says. That must be in that sense. My spirit must be in search of such a being who will love him, who will take care of him, who will communicate with him, searching for it constantly. And when creation does not indicate or does not point to him, he, who, my spirit is in suffering. That must be the case. So the author says something like this. And when I ask myself, like, is that the case? I guess it's not that hard to say, yes, I'm constantly looking for someone, because, I mean, look at the way I interact with people. I try to find this compassion, I try to find this communication, I try to find this being taken care of in people. Like I try someone, I try another one, I try another, I'm always looking for it. I need someone to appreciate me, I need someone to tell me that I am valuable. Tell me that you are worthy of love. Always looking for that. That's how, this is the engine which shape my interactions with the people. So yeah, searching for recognition from someone, from him. And my spirit, it's like constantly needs this. That's the reason my communication with people or my relationship with people is shaped in that way. If I'm honest to myself, I will see how I look for he in people. You were saying something like that.
This may refer to, I'm not sure, I'm just thinking loud. The verse, like God has breathed into man, like from his own spirit. Whatever that verse means may be related to what he says, let's do here. Whatever that verse refers to, I think talking about an aspect of man in a way that is already connected with him. In your own like conscience, like you are already connected with him. You know that there is something.
And this also reminds me of another aspect of he or huwa. It's third person. So knowing the Creator in the third person is in Surah Al-Fatiha, which we repeat several times every day. First 3 verses describe the Creator in the third person. So we say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So we first describe the Creator, the third person, He, as Rabbil Alameen, the one that takes care of the existence. Then we talk about Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So another aspect of my spirit is being touched now. First, maybe my observations and intellect was touched. Now comes Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim with the one that's merciful. Then comes Malik Yawmiddin, because this is also part of me which says, looks for justice, looks for order, and says that it shouldn't be all about here. There must be something more and deeper. Then these are, I guess, also all part of describing this third person to me, which from there I transition to Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, starting a conversation. Then this third person becomes a second person. And I start talking to him as you, not as he anymore. But I guess this first 3 verses are really, this is why we keep repeating it every day several times, describing or satiating my need for who he is. And without doing that, I cannot really start a conversation with him.
And what you just said, while Faraz asking, I guess, for like time for speaking, just very short thing after that, Faraz, please go ahead. What you just said is, I think, really important, like these first three verses. What is there has an exact counterpiece or match in our needs, as again, like when he talks about the Creator as Rahman or Ar-Rahim, or the virtue of all hamds, or the owner, how would you translate it? So sovereignty, the Maliki Yawmiddin, having the dominance on everything, or owner of the day, I don't know. When he describes the he with these qualities, with these names, they all look at some needs that I constantly have, because I'm looking for someone who is Rahman and Rahim. My spirit constantly looking for someone who has the dominions of things, who can provide me justice, because I'm constantly in search for justice. I am constantly thankful for things again, if I'm honest to myself, and I'm looking for He who is worthy of these things. So Fatiha describing me what I am looking for. The Quran tells me then, like, Birkan, this is what you are looking for. And do you want to know, who is He that you are looking for? So anyway, Faraz, please go ahead.
Very briefly, I was thinking to myself when I read first, I was reading the Quran as a young boy in Arabic. When I think back, in my memory, what the thing that stands out, the repetition that stands out for some reason, is the sentence, Inna Allah ala kulli shayin qadir. I don't know why, maybe it's just it's easy to say, or it rhymes it has a musical thing, or I don't know why, but I just keep remembering and encountering this phrase again and again. Inna Allah ala kulli shayin qadir, ala kulli shayin qadir. Something this stands out. Maybe I was just reading the surahs where these kind of things are mentioned. I don't know how, but this is my memory of what I kind of always said, which always said in Allah kulli shayin qadir. I don't know why I keep saying that, in Allah kulli shayin qadir. And when you were discussing this huwa, that this we need reminder of comes to the spirit, almost like the body needs the breath in that way. So I just was thinking back to my memory and thinking how do I feel about it now? This Inna Allah ala kulli shayin qadir. And I feel this was in this for this particular sentence example, I can say that I can feel that it's really something that is what gives my spirit satisfaction and joy when I realize this. And when I say inna something else, ala shayin qadir, this thing that is before me, anything, any event, when I see the control, who has the control of it, or is it precisely and wisely and compassionately willed to be as such? Qadr is an interesting concept, like precise measure, which also means justice, giving something exactly what's due, which also means wisdom, fulfilling the need fully, not less or not more. So there's lots of things that get subsumed under this idea of Qudra or Qadir, or God as being not Qadir, but ala kulli shay. And I think I realized more and more in my life that while I was happy with God as Qadir, I had many other things that were, in my eyes, in my spirit's eye, in control of certain things. Whether somebody will like me or not was not Allah, la kulli shayin qadir's doing. That was Allah, this person's. Whether I will succeed at some plan or fail, whether something will happen as I like it or not. Those were things that was God is not directly involved there. Or there is not some precise Qudra involved there. I wasn't aware. And so even now I feel like, any moment in my life where I don't have this Allah as, or say huwa la kulli shay'in qadir. That is one way in which I quite relate to this idea that as soon as I don't have this qadir in my life, then there's lots of other things that are doing that measuring and assigning and happening, and then those things are blind, and they don't give me any confidence that they know what they're doing, and I have no sense of security about the things in the way that they are. I have all kinds of fears and anxieties and no real way out of them to sort of know how can I feel safe, how can I feel this is nice, this is good, how can I be at peace with it. So I just thought of my personal example of the Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. So always throughout childhood it stuck with me, like Quran keeps saying Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Maybe it's not even a very frequent verse, but for me as a child, this seemed to be the most repeated thing that stuck to me. And now, in what you guys have been saying, I kind of relate to that. Hova is my spirit is very much tied to or in need of this one, according to whose measure and wisdom and compassion everything is as it is, not some things, but kulli shay. So that's very interesting reminder.
I guess it also acts as a medicine. As you were saying, when you face things that you cannot make sense, or when you face things that you think out of order, out of control, attacking you kind of, when you're reminded that He, ala kulli shay'in qadir, it's like put you in peace, give you peace. Acts like a medicine. I guess now it makes sense when the author says your spirit needs this. Because otherwise you feel like you're lacking something, like you are sick and you need this medicine. Some he is in need of every hour, like in the name of God, and so on. In the name of God. Any comments on that part?
I'm still thinking about how the spirit needs the word who. And thank you for helping me out here, both of you, all of you actually. The comparison between how the body needs air. You cannot escape it. With the same thing with the spirit is, it's pretty serious actually. If I really think about this, how needy or important I am. As for us, sharing his personal experience of this, ala kulli shay'in qadir, and same thing with who in any sense, like Burkan mentioned, like many different ways that this he is in need. The spirit, that's what the spirit is actually in need for, but most of the time like I don't realize that, or we don't really see that this need, how needy that spirit is for this source in every aspect. Otherwise, there is no comfort if without this source, being like the spirit being attached to this source, there is no comfort at all. It's just like the body's attachment to the air, and then the spirit is similarly attached to this source, who or he. Yeah, and then again, sorry about that. Like Berkan, you were asking about the next phrase about, for some, of these, phrases or repetitions man is in need in every hour. For example, like Bismillah in his name, or in the name of God. Again, it's another who that the spirit also needs, because nothing otherwise, there's nothing actually that can happen with his name. That's what Qadir also implies. I'll stop here.
So, Bismillah is at the beginning of chapters of Quran, and also in the practice of Rasulullah, it was at the beginning of actions. So, to me, this one also reminds that every hour we need Bismillah, sort of, because it implies that in the name of Allah, and then you do something, you say something, you do an action, but you're not doing it on your own behalf. You are doing it on behalf of somebody else. So this is why at the beginning of actions, the Prophet's practice was to start with Bismillah, saying, reminding himself or reconditioning himself that I am not going to do what I'm going to do, what I am intending to do on my behalf. So remind yourself, recondition yourself that it is He who creates the things that I am intending to do right now. I'm just willing, the rest, He is taking care of it. So this is why beginning of every action requires Bismillah. And for the rest of things, like who, throughout the action, let's say you intended to walk. While you're walking, who is always there, meaning that the action is ongoing, but throughout that,
Who in Arabic, right?
Okay. Who. He, yeah. So throughout this action, your spirit is constantly again connected to He. But for the beginning part of it, you're reconditioning, reformatting yourself, aligning yourself, reminding yourself that whatever I am going to do, although I am saying I am doing it, no, it's not me who is doing it. I am just intending it. So He is the one that does it. In the name of Him that I am acting. And I guess as a reminder for that, chapters of Quran are starting with Bismillah. So it is at the beginning of things, as a reminder to recondition, realign. And by author saying in here, every hour we are in need of Bismillah, reminds me that at the beginning of things, like every hour you are doing something else maybe. In general, of course, maybe you start doing something 5 minutes later, you finish whatever. But in general, contrasting it with who, you use Bismillah at the beginning of something to realign yourself.
Realignment. I don't know, just realizing as we read, as we discussed, how much I am in need of such a realignment. Asim was saying, like, we always forget we are in need of such things and so on. After he said that, I remember that all these worldviews or as an education system that we exposed to, the so-called explanations of the reality, the universe, or human relationships, sociology, right? You interact with people in that way because, X, Y, Z, and so on. All these things that we are told, how they are in contradiction with what we are studying here. Like, I have such relationship with people because I'm in need of Him. That's the real explanation. I'm against something unfair because I'm in need of the one who is just. But what we are told, what we've been exposed to, all these theories about the justice, all these theories about the social life, and so on and so forth, which is so, I don't know, like the interwoven to our fabric, that it's really hard to get rid of. Every time, we discuss such stuff, and every time I remember the opposite that I'm exposed to constantly, I get so angry. Like, this is so cruel. What's happening, right? So cruel. Making us all blind. Yeah, I know, like we all have this individual responsibility to find the truth and confirm it and so on and so forth. But I don't know, it would be unjust not to say that, right? This is so really cruel that what's happening around us, what people teaching us about the social life, about our relationship with the people, why it happens that way, why it happened this way. While the real answer is that I am looking for him. I am in need of him, my spirit in need of him. That's the reason. Whatever I do, that's the reason. And I have to wait for, let's say, just quote unquote, Friday discussions to remember this. So I guess why the Quran being an invocational reminder so important. This is the reality we live in. The reminder aspect of Quran is so important, so critical for us. Forget about what you learn from Quran. Just a reminder, as you were saying, like reallocation of ourselves. Remembering that in the name of God. Whatever you're doing, it's in the name of God, Birkan. That's the reason you are doing it. It's not like, we shouldn't maybe take it as, oh, Birkan, you should do this in the name of God. Just the opposite. You are already doing it in the name of God. But somebody should remind you that you are not doing it in the name of Abdul Rahman. You are doing it in the name of God. So try to find the God that you are looking for.
One other dimension of like Quran being the reminder is what is already within you, like what's already, how do you say, like inscribed in yourself. The Quran is the reminder, or in other words, like disclosure. Is that the right word? Disclosure, or I don't know, whatever you want to say, of that potential or that nature that you have, that you are inscribed with. Quran is reminding you that, like, hey, listen, like you have such and such potentials or like dimensions that you have that you are not even aware, or you don't pay attention to.
And like it is one of the fard of salat. Before you start salat, you speak your intention, and then you start your salat, because your intention is an opportunity for you to remember what you are doing, and you should be also speaking it out loud within yourself, at least within a voice that you yourself can hear what you are doing. So I guess Bismillah is doing the same job, or there for fulfilling this purpose, reminding myself about my intention. So Bismillah in this sense is really name of my intention, saying that this action, I am doing it in the name of the Creator. So reminding me about what I am all about. So that's why then, and even it's interesting, we can think of this about how we interpret the existence, for instance. You can locate yourself or align yourself, and then you start looking at things from that perspective. This is why the starting point is very important, because I might have shifted a little bit, then all the coordinates of me is going to be misaligned. So if I align myself at the beginning to the right coordinates, start from there, then I will start interpreting what comes next in whatever I am starting to do. Or it might be starting a new school, it might be starting, I don't know, eating meal, whatever. any action that I would consider as an action in my experience, then I will interpret it from the perspective of Bismillah. But otherwise, I'm going to start interpreting it from my own perspective. It might be a conversation with a friend. I might take it personal, or I might take it in the name of the Creator. Maybe the friend is going to start saying good things about me or start cursing at me. So in either case, how am I going to take it? Am I going to take it personal, or am I going to take it in the name of the Creator? So giving in the name of the Creator, taking in the name of the Creator, as Nursi is putting in the first word. So however I start, the rest really goes like that. So just to make it like a, for me, formula, Bismillah in this sense is really my intention, or alignment. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة